All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are going to resume with the state's case. So, before we go any further, I wanted to point out to you, my goal is to try to go to close to 5 o'clock this evening, so we can move the case along. So if you, at lunch need to tell family or what have you, what our schedule is, I just want to give you a heads up. I figure if we, for some reason, stop earlier, no one's going to be mad at me, right? All right, so with all that in mind, Ms. Schlesinger, you may call the state's next witness. Or, I'm sorry, Ms. Bailey-Smith, sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Barbara Flory.
All right, thank you. What was that name again? What was the name again?
Barbara Flory.
Okay. Hi, ma'am. How are you? Welcome. Good morning. And you just come right up here. That's fine. Just raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that the information you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, thank you. Go ahead and take a seat there. Make yourself comfortable. And once you get settled in, if you would just give the spelling of your name to the reporter. Okay, ma'am?
I need to state my objection before you get started. Do the motion.
First name Barbara, B-A-R-B-A-R-A. Last name Flory, F-L-O-R-Y.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And if you would just pull that microphone a little bit closer to you. All right, great, thank you.
Okay.
And Judge, I'm going to object as to this testimony per the pretrial motion in limine from the defense.
All right, so the court's ruling will stand, but it is noted. Thank you.
And Judge, I'd ask there to be a continuing objection during the testimony.
Yeah, your objection shall run throughout the testimony. It's overruled, but it's noted and shall run, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Flory, will you introduce yourself to the jury for me?
Yes, my name is Barbara Flory. I was the director of Heritage House. We provided services to the Fergusons. I'm a graduate of Washington University. I hold a master's in social work from George Warren Brown School of Social Work, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Missouri.
Okay. And back in 2003, I think you're currently retired, correct?
I am retired.
Back in 2003, what was your job?
I was director of Heritage House, a supervised visitation and custody exchange center.
Okay. And you were familiar with the Ferguson family?
Yes.
You knew Christian Ferguson and now Lynn Ferguson?
Yes.
Okay. And they would come to you regularly, would you say, for visitation?
Yes, for custody exchange.
Okay. And back in 2003, was there a time when they stopped coming to Heritage House?
Yes.
And do you remember what that date was?
It was March 22nd, 2003.
Okay. And it's been almost 20 years, but does this case stick out in your head?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And do you remember that last day that you saw the Ferguson family?
I do.
Will you tell me what Christian looked like that day?
He was quieter than normal. Normal for Christian was different than other children his age because of his disability, but he was pretty lethargic that day, even for Christian.
Okay. And when his mom, would you see his interaction with Theda when he got there, or when she got there?
Always on the exchange, he was really happy to see Theda. I mean, you could see that. He smiled, and he would as best he could, run to her.
And was something different about that on March 22nd?
Yes, he reacted differently toward her. He was very quiet that day.
And you said earlier lethargic?
Yes.
And would that be, in your experience with the Fergusons and with Christian, abnormal for Christian?
Yes.
And what about Dawan's demeanor that day? Did you notice anything about his demeanor?
Dawan was late that day, and so he was rushed, and he was always a quiet man, and perhaps a little more talkative that day.
And when you say talkative, what did he say that day, or what was his state of mind that day? Your impression of his state of mind?
He was I'm going to use the word depressed. He was frustrated. Caring for Christian was becoming more difficult.
And did he express that to you?
He did. He was I went in to talk to him because he was late on that particular day. And he did express that it was becoming more and more difficult to care for Christian. He didn't know how he was going to continue to do that, and that it was getting financially more of a burden to him.
Did you see Christian after March 22nd of 2003?
No, I did not.
Did you see Dawan Ferguson after March 22nd, 2003?
No, I did not.
Did you see Theda Thomas at the time after March 22nd, 2003?
Yes, we had regularly scheduled exchanges based upon the court order, and Theda continued to come on her days. I'm sure, at least for another month.
I have nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, as you had stated, Heritage House was the place that provided custody exchange services, correct?
Correct.
And that was a joint venture through St. Louis City Family Court and Provident Counseling?
Yes.
And you started providing, or Heritage House provided services for the family starting back in 1996, 1997?
Very early on after we opened.
Okay. And so over the years, you have had interactions with both parents?
Yes.
And as you had testified, Dawan seemed more of a mild-mannered person?
Yes.
But I believe you had told me at the deposition both seemed very concerned about Christian and his care.
Absolutely.
And both were very faithful in their custody exchanges.
Your Honor, object. May we approach?
You may. may continue.
Thank you.
You had a question maybe pending, or was it answered? I can't recall.
They objected at the last question, and I'll withdraw that question.
All right, there you go. Thank you. Okay, you may continue.
Thank you. Ms. Flory, did you ever speak with a special agent named Liza Ludovico in regard to Christian Ferguson?
I don't recall.
Okay. Going to the March 22nd, 2003 exchange, as you testified, you were present for the exchange of Christian and then Connor between Theta and Dawan, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And as you had testified, you had a conversation with Dawan at this exchange, right?
yes,
Okay. And you are a licensed clinical social worker?
I am.
Okay. And in that conversation with Dawan, I believe you put that hat on when speaking with him, correct?
To a point.
And this was a therapeutic conversation you had with a parent expressing some concerns, correct?
Not necessarily. My conversation with him centered around the fact that he had been late for exchanges on numerous occasions, and on that particular day, he was late. And whenever parents were late, I always had a conversation with them because punctuality was really important for us. Safety was one of our concerns.
So is it that your testimony today is that the conversation you had with Mr. Ferguson was not a therapeutic conversation?
It
Hold on a second. What was the objection?
Argumentative.
Response?
Judge, I'm setting up an impeachment.
All right, so I'm going to overrule the objection. Why don't you ask the question again, please?
So is it your testimony today that that conversation that you had with Mr. Ferguson at Heritage's house was not a therapeutic conversation using your licensed clinical social worker hat at that time?
that conversation evolved into more of a therapeutic conversation.
Okay, so it was. And it was involving a parent expressing just concerns with having a disabled child, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you are a mandated reporter, is that correct?
yes,
And after this conversation with Mr. Ferguson, you did not call the police, correct?
no,
And you did not report him for abuse or neglect, correct?
no,
Because you had no concerns to believe that the children were in risk after that conversation, correct?
Well, I'm going to overrule the objection. The question becomes, I think, here is as to whether, in her capacity as a professional, she felt that there was enough there to call. So you may want to restate your question. So I'm going to change my ruling. I'm going to sustain your objection. Why don't you restate your question, okay?
Okay. After the conversation you had with Mr. Ferguson, did you feel any type of concern where you needed to call Division of Family Services?
Objection, Your Honor, sustained question.
It's overruled. You may answer the question.
I did not.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Witness may be released. Bailey Smith, the witness may be released.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may step down. You're free to go, ma'am. Have a good day. Thank you. Be safe. All right, state may call its next witness, please.
Melissa Heigham, Your Honor.
Morning, ma'am. Welcome.
Thank you.
Come on up. You can come a little closer.
Swear to
Raise your right hand, swear you in. You just swear that the information you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. Once you get comfortable there, if you'll get the spelling of your name for the recorder, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
My name is Melissa, Melissa Heiam, Heigham.
Ms. Heigham, will you introduce yourself to the jury for me?
Hello, I'm Melissa Heiam. Tell them about what I do.
Well, can you tell them what your educational background is first for me?
Sure. I'm a pharmacist by training. I have a Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy and a Doctor of Pharmacy degree from St. Louis College of Pharmacy. I have a Master's of Health Administration from Simmons College in Boston. I completed residency training at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and I'm board certified in oncology, and I'm a board certified pediatric pharmacy specialist.
And how long have you been a pharmacist?
28 years.
Okay. And how are you currently employed?
I'm employed by St. Louis Children's Hospital. I'm the Director of Pharmacy and Radiology.
Have you been employed with Children's Hospital since 2003 or before 2003, correct?
Since 1995.
Okay. And will you tell the jurors a little bit about what your role is at Children's Hospital? I'm guessing that your role at Children's Hospital is different than a pharmacist, say, at CVS or Walgreens.
Correct. My current role as the Director of Children's, I have oversight for 4 pharmacies. We have an inpatient pharmacy that services all of the hospitalized patients. We provide services 24/7. We have a retail or an outpatient pharmacy, which is similar to your Walgreens or your CVS, but it's housed at St. Louis Children's Hospital. And then we have 2 additional retail pharmacies at our ambulatory surgery centers, one in South County and one in West County, and I'm responsible for the oversight and the full pharmacy operations at all of those locations.
And are you considered the custodian of records for Children's Pharmacy?
I am.
Now, how is a prescription filled? If you get a prescription from a doctor, or how do you get one?
Sure. So we'll just focus on the retail setting, so the outpatient setting. Prescriptions can come to us in a variety of ways. They can be called in by the physician, in which we take a verbal order and document the information from the provider. A patient can show up to the window with a hard copy of the prescription, or now we can get electronic copies of prescriptions through e-prescribing, which today is the most common way that we receive prescriptions, and also we can get them by fax.
So 20 years ago, could you get the e-prescriptions?
No. It would have been a hard copy presented to us, it would have been called in, or it would have been faxed.
Okay. And when you get one, a prescription, what do you do with that prescription? Do you verify it at Children's Hospital?
Yes, all the pharmacists are responsible for verifying the accuracy and the efficacy of the prescription. So we evaluate the medication, if it's appropriate for the patient based on their diagnosis. We evaluate the dose that is being prescribed by the provider, the frequency with which it's being administered. If there are any points of confusion, we contact the provider and get it clarified. If we think that it's potentially the dose is too high or the dose is too low or interacts with the medication that the patient may already be receiving, then we would contact the provider and clarify the prescription. Now, what were the hours of the pharmacy? You worked there since 1996. What were the pharmacy hours back in 2003? Our retail pharmacy was open from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. back in 2003 from Monday through Friday.
Now, let's say a parent all of a sudden realizes at midnight on a Saturday, oh no, I'm out of a life-sustaining medication for my son. I need it tonight. What would happen? So they just need to call the hospital and ask for the pharmacy, and our inpatient pharmacy, which provides services 24/7, 365, would fill that prescription for that patient to make sure the patient had the medications they needed until the pharmacy would open, and they could get a full retail pharmacy prescription. So there are safeguards in place? Absolutely. We don't want any child going without their medicine. And this was true in 2003 as well? Absolutely. Okay. Now, the medications that you fill at Children's Pharmacy, can these also be filled at just your regular Walgreens, CVS, whatever other pharmacy there is?
It depends. There are a lot of specialty things that we do at St. Louis Children's Hospital. So some compounds that a regular Walgreens or CVS or Walmart pharmacy wouldn't have the supplies to prepare. Many of the medications are the same, but some of them can only be received through our St. Louis Children's Hospital retail pharmacy.
Okay. Your Honor, if I may approach the
You may.
witness. Show you what's marked as case number 10. If I may approach, Your Honor.
You may.
Show you what's been marked as case number 10, Ms. Heigham. Do you recognize those documents?
I do.
Okay. And how do you recognize those documents?
These documents were printed from our retail pharmacy software system, computer system in 2003.
Okay. And are these, you earlier said that you're the custodian of records, correct?
Correct.
Are these documents made in the normal course of business by St. Louis Children's Pharmacy?
Correct. Yes, we maintain electronic records of all of our transactions.
And when you fill a prescription, even back in 2003, would that have been automatically updated into your computer system
Yes.
at the time of the occurrence?
Yes.
And are these records kept and maintained under your care, custody, and control?
Yes.
Have you had occasion to review these records?
I have.
Okay. And are these a true and accurate depiction of the Children's Hospital records, sorry, I'm wandering again, that were kept by St. Louis Children's Pharmacy for Christian Ferguson?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd move to admit State's Exhibit 10 into evidence.
All right, thank you. Any objection?
Yes, Judge, I would object that these are records are hearsay.
All right, so the objection will be overruled. State's Exhibit 10 shall be admitted in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Ms. Heigham, you actually prepared a chart, is that correct?
I did.
And you based this chart off of your review of the records?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State Exhibit number 10A. And I'll use this as demonstrative, Your Honor, if it's okay with the court.
Okay.
In the meantime, what prescriptions was Christian prescribed?
Christian was prescribed to receive bufenil, sodium benzoate, arginine crystals, polycitric K, vitamin B6, and phytonadione, which are the same, but they were dispensed at different times depending on what was available, but they're the same vitamin, pantothenic acid, and Carnitor.
Okay. And as the director of the pharmacy, and you said you have a doctorate in pharmacy, are you familiar with these medications?
I am.
Are these FDA approved, or I'm sorry, let me ask, were these FDA approved back in 2003?
Some of them were. So in 2003, four of them were FDA approved. I'm just going to look at the list here. So the Carnitor, the bufenil, and the polycitric K, there were three of them. Those are the three that were FDA approved in 2003. Vitamins, so the pantothenic acid is vitamin B5, and then the vitamin B6, which is also the pyridoxine. Those are not approved by the FDA. They're considered supplements. The FDA never approves supplements, but we look for other characteristics that you see on TV, like the USP certification, to ensure certain standards with the preparation of those, since they aren't manufactured by a pharmaceutical company and under the supervision of the FDA. The sodium benzoate and the arginine crystals are chemical compounds, and these are chemicals that we use to treat, and there's a variety of them over a broad variety of diseases that we use when there isn't an FDA-approved medication. And so these chemicals are purchased from a pharmaceutical-grade chemical company. They're prescribed and used in the treatment of a variety of pediatric diseases.
Now, have you heard the term in your career and in your training, life-sustaining medication?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
It means if someone requires a life-sustaining medication and they went without it, they would not survive, or they would not survive very long.
Okay. Are any of these medications life-sustaining?
Yes.
Which ones are considered life-sustaining, Ms. Heigham?
The sodium benzoate, the arginine crystals, and the bufenil are life-sustaining in a patient with citrullinemia.
And what do these medications specifically do?
These medications target a reduction and excretion of ammonia and nitrogen that are built up with this particular genetic metabolic disorder.
So they're meant to counterbalance what the disease causes.
Exactly.
Hold on a second. What was the objection?
Bleeding.
I'll sustain the objection. You may want to rephrase your question, please.
Of course, Your Honor. Ms. Heigham, what are these drugs intended to do?
They're intended to lower the levels of ammonia and maintain normal metabolic functions in the patient's body.
I'm going to show you it's been made to State Exhibit 10A. If I may, Your Honor.
You may.
And you prepared this document, correct?
I did.
And how did you prepare that document?
So you can see from the document from 2003, it was an older computer system, and everything that was printed from the computer system at the time in 2003 is in chronologic order. So for ease of review, I created a document by each specific medication in order, the number of days that the medication was prescribed and what we dispensed, and then the frequency with which the medication was picked up by the pharmacy for administration to Christian.
And did you make this document because it makes it easier for you to read these documents?
I did.
Okay. Your Honor, if I may,
Judge, I'm going to object.
Hold on one second. If you would go back to the microphone and make your request again. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
if I may present these, publish these to the jury.
Okay.
And Judge,
Response?
I will object. I've never seen this chart before. I haven't had a chance to review it or go through it with the records I have.
May I see that for a second,
Yes,
please?
Your Honor. And it's a demonstrative.
And ma'am, this, the information contained in this demonstrative Exhibit 10A, that information is contained in those records, and you simply, in essence, collated it and organized it?
I did, yes.
Judge, I still object because I have not had a chance to review that and look for that myself in the records.
All right, well, I'm going to overrule the objection. Is the demonstrative aid, the witness has indicated she prepared it, the source of her preparation and materials. You'll have an opportunity to cross-examine her about that. So overruled, and you may publish that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Heim, if you could you explain to me what this chart means? The first thing I see is carnivore or carnitor. I don't think I'm saying that correct.
The intended duration of these prescriptions, the physician was always writing for 30-day supply. The frequency with which these were being picked up were not at the 30-day mark.
In fact, it's 42-day, 60-day.
Objection leading.
Hold on a second. That'll be sustained. If you want to restate your question, please.
So if the numbers read 42, 60, 37, what does that mean?
That's how many days the care provider went without picking up the prescription for the patient.
And you've been doing this since 1995, correct?
Correct.
Is this, in your experience, normal for people to be late picking up life-sustaining medication?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled. You may answer the question, ma'am.
No, this is not normal.
Let's talk about sodium benzoate. Sodium benzoate. Now, what is that considered a life-sustaining medication?
Absolutely. Sodium benzoate is one of the nitrogen scavengers, so it decreases ammonia in the body when you lack the enzymes to process these things, the ammonia and nitrogen yourself. So this is most definitely a life-sustaining medication.
And in your training and your experience and being a doctor in pharmacy, what could happen if somebody did not receive carnitine or sodium benzoate?
Objection, speculation.
That'll be overruled. You may answer, ma'am.
The sodium benzoate is a life-sustaining medication. It maintains the safe excretion of ammonia. So if a patient who has citrullinemia goes without sodium benzoate, they will have an ammonia buildup in their bloodstream, which will lead to initially lethargy, listlessness, muscle weakness, followed by coma and death.
And so looking at this chart, it looks like these were filled for initially, what does the 29 mean? Does that mean it was filled for 29 days, the prescription?
Yes. I took the information directly out of the records from 2003, and so the prescription was for 800 mils, and if you do the math on this particular medication, 800 mils only lasts 29 and a fraction of a day, so the system rounded it down to 29, and so we want to dispense, and the physician orders the medication in a volume that is measurable. So that's why it's close to 30.
Okay. And I see on here numbers next to that are higher than the 30, the 29 and 30. What does that mean?
Same as before, that while these were intended to be 30-day supplies of medication, they weren't picked up for a span of 42 days, 60 days, 37 days, 74 days. So there were extended periods of time for a 30-day supply for a supply of medication that should have only lasted 30, but additional medication was not retrieved for 74 days, as an example.
Okay. And with regards to arginine crystal, now what does that do in your training and experience?
So arginine similarly provides an alternate pathway for ammonia excretion from the body. So also one of those very important medications needed to maintain lower levels of ammonia. So again, without the arginine, the patients could experience hyperammonia, and they would have listlessness, muscle weakness, coma, death. The two medications that are most important for management of the ammonia are the sodium benzoate and the bufenil, which is at the top of the next page. Those are the two very most important medications. The arginine is additive to that, but they're all an important part of the regimen. So yeah, the bufenil and the sodium benzoate are, in my mind, the two most important medications that Christian was receiving.
And the bufenil, it looks like from here, what is that 121-day number, 7480?
Yes, so we dispensed 30-day supplies as the prescriptions were written, and they weren't picked up at 30-day intervals. There was a period there of 121 days that went between when a prescription, when the two 30-day supplies were picked up. So it was an extended period. And I actually, on this one, so for example, across those 10 dispenses, that would have been a 300-day supply. But looking at the time that those medications were retrieved and available for administration to Christian, that was 580 days. So it was a 300-day supply of medication that was stretched out over a 580-day period in terms of the frequency with which it was being purchased from the pharmacy or retrieved from the pharmacy.
And you said bufenil powder is one of the most important medications for him?
Correct.
And will you explain to the jurors what polycitric A does?
Sure. Polycitric A is an alkalinizing agent that we use for a variety of things. In this instance, given some of the metabolic processes, it was needed to maintain appropriate pH in the body. When someone is acidotic and does not receive polycitric A, this process would take much longer than the buildup of ammonia, but an acidotic patient would exhibit some probably nausea and vomiting, again, muscle weakness, lethargy, decreased alertness, and ultimately there can be harm to the organs and can lead to respiratory failure, but it's a much longer process.
Is polycitric A considered a life-sustaining medication?
Potentially.
In a child with citrullinemia, would it be a life-sustaining medication?
Yes.
And then I see pyridoxine.
Yes, so pyridoxine and vitamin B6 are the same thing. You can see in 01 we dispensed the pyridoxine, and in 02 it was the vitamin B6. It's just based on what was available to dispense, but they're the same vitamin. And in citrullinemia, because of the dietary restrictions, it's not uncommon to have vitamin and mineral deficiencies that require supplementation. So the vitamins were there to supplement the deficiencies.
And what about the pantothenic acid?
Pantothenic acid is also a vitamin supplement. It's technically B5, and it would be the same thing. It would be a vitamin deficiency that was being supplemented.
Now, I noticed on all of these that the last date, what did you notice is the last date on these medications?
4/22/03,
And what does that mean, 4/22 of 03?
April 22nd, 2003. That was the last day that we dispensed or had a request to dispense medication for this patient.
And so, Carnitor, 4/22 of 03.
Yes.
And is that a life-sustaining medication?
Likely not.
Okay. What about sodium benzoate?
Yes.
And that last refill date was 4/22 of 03?
Yes.
Bufenil powder? What was the last refill date?
4/22/03.
Polycitric A?
Sorry, my eyes aren't got old eyes. 4/22/03.
And then I think the pyridoxine and the, did you testify earlier the pyridoxine and the vitamin B6 are the same?
Yes.
And what was the refill date on that?
5/21/02.
And the pantothenic acid?
5/21/02.
Now, you've been doing this for a long time. If somebody can't pay, in your experience as the pharmacist, what happens next? If they come to fulfill a prescription and they say their card's declined, they don't have any money, what happens?
We contact social work. We don't want anyone to leave without their needed medication, so we have mechanisms at St. Louis Children's Hospital to get assistance through social work or our family care fund, where there's no charge or no copays for our patients.
When you looked at these records, did the amount of prescriptions called in by the doctor ever change?
No, meaning the medication itself, the dose and the amount to dispense and the frequency with which it was being given, no, those stayed the same.
Okay. Were any of these prescriptions filled and then put back on the shelf because they were not picked up?
Yes.
And which ones were those?
So in the records from 2003, on September 19th, we filled prescriptions for the vitamin B6 and the pantothenic acid that were never picked up and were returned to stock. On March 14th of 2003, we filled prescriptions for the vitamin B6 again, the pantothenic acid, the polycitra, and the Carnitor that were never picked up. And then the last one was on 4/22. The last prescription that we filled for the sodium benzoate was never picked up on 4/22. So I guess to go back to your question, the last time we dispensed sodium benzoate from our pharmacy that was collected by a caregiver was on February 7th, 2003.
And I think you stated this earlier, but what would be the potential repercussions of not giving life-sustaining medication as prescribed by a doctor?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled. You may answer, ma'am.
So these medications, the sodium benzoate, the buphenol, and the arginine, ammonia would build up, muscle weakness, coma, and death.
And nothing further.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Hello.
Hello.
Just one quick question. When a child or a patient is admitted into the hospital, when they have a hospitalization, to your knowledge, are they receiving medication furnished through the hospital during that stay?
Yes.
Okay. And the records that you have span from what period of time is that?
So the report is from August 27th, 2001 to August 27th, 2003.
Okay. And these are the records from Children's, not Cardinal Glennon, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Nothing further.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Witness may be released.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down, ma'am. Thank you. Have a good day. All right. State may call the next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Mary Ellen Penick.
All right.
And Judge, this is the witness that I...
Right. Good morning. Come on up here. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
If you would raise your right hand, you do solemnly swear to give information you are about to provide the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Go ahead and take a seat. Make yourself comfortable, and once you're settled, if you'll give the spelling of your name to my reporter, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Mary Ellen is two words, M-A-R-Y-E-L-L-E-N, Penick, P-E-N-N-I-C-K.
All right, you may proceed.
Judge, I need to state my objection based on pretrial motions from defense, motion in limine.
The court recalls the defendant's objection. The court has made a ruling as to that objection, so it is overruled. However, the objection shall run throughout the testimony of the witness if you would like.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi, my name is Mary Ellen Penick.
And how are you employed?
I am retired now, but I was employed for 49 and a half years for the St. Louis City Family Court in their domestic relations mediation unit.
And back in 2003, in May, June of 2003, what was your job title with St. Louis City Family Court?
At that time, I was assistant supervisor of the mediation unit.
And as a part of your duties, would you assist deputy juvenile officers and go to court and do things like that?
Yes,
Okay. Did you ever assist in the Christian Ferguson case?
yes,
And did that involve his father, Dawan Ferguson, and his mother, Theda Wilson at the time?
yes.
I want to direct your attention specifically to June 9th of 2003. Do you remember that day?
I do.
And did you attend a status conference in Judge Frawley's courtroom that day?
I did.
And what was the purpose of that status conference?
Well, the mom had filed a motion to modify custody, and at the status conference, it's like a gathering of the parents and the judge and the attorneys to talk about what is happening in the case, what's the status, what's gone wrong, how can we fix it.
In this status conference, did the issue of missed visitations arise?
Yes, the father had not brought the children to the court-ordered visitation many times, and the mom brought it back to court to address that complaint.
And if you know, did Judge Frawley make any comments about the missed visitation or intention of reinstating that visitation?
Objection, hearsay.
All right, and are you asserting that this is being offered for the truth of the matter asserted? Is that the basis of your hearsay objection, correct? Ms. Steele?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Response?
And, Your Honor, I am not offering it for its truth.
All right, thank you. All right, objection overruled. You may answer. Do you need the question repeated?
Please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
If you remember, did Judge Frawley make any comments or statements with regard to the missed visitation and resuming the visitation schedule?
Yes, he did.
What, if anything, did he say?
He directed the dad's attorney to speak with his client about how long he would like to stay in jail if he chose to continue not complying with court-ordered, and it was Judge Frawley's court order, not complying with court-ordered parenting time for the mom.
And did you observe the defendant as these comments were being made by Judge Frawley?
I did.
And can you describe to the jury the defendant's appearance and mannerisms while this was being said?
Objection, relevance.
That's overruled. You may answer, ma'am.
He was upset, agitated. I mean, I've been in court a lot of times, and lawyers have to talk to their clients and explain things to them, what they need to do. And Mr. Ferguson was upset, agitated at his lawyer telling him he must comply.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination?
Thank you, Judge. So at the June 9th, 2003 hearing, Dawan appeared at the hearing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Dawan was addressed by the court?
What Judge Farley did was he would tell the lawyer, speak to your client, convey my message, which, of course, Dawan could hear what the judge was saying.
Now, do you remember sitting for a deposition and you said Judge Farley addressed Mr. Ferguson and his attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So he was addressed by the court?
Yes.
Okay. And not getting into what the court said, but they were asking the reason why there'd been no visitations, correct?
I don't remember any reason being given.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The reason was asked, but you don't remember what the reason was given, correct?
Right.
Okay. And at this informal status, it did not address the motion to modify custody that day, correct?
Only in that they were acknowledging there is an existing motion to modify, which would get a court hearing, but the addressing of it is a status conference.
Right. And there were no modifications done in this informal status hearing, correct?
No.
Okay. So there was no changing of exchange. They didn't modify exchange schedules or anything like that.
Right.
Okay. And it didn't modify any custody arrangements, correct?
Right.
Okay. It was simply, we need to do the visitations that include both then Connor and Christian.
Correct.
Okay. And your testimony here today was that when you saw Dawan in court, he appeared upset and
Unhappy with.
unhappy.
Yeah.
Okay. And back in September of 2003, you spoke with Special Agent Liza Ludovico in regards to their investigation on Christian Ferguson,
Correct.
which was closer in time than it is testifying here today, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you never told her that you saw Dawan's demeanor as upset and angry.
I know you've got the notes there. I don't know whether it's in there or not.
Okay. Nothing further.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Witness may be released.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step down. You're free to go. Have a good day. Be careful. State may call your next witness.
And yes, Your Honor, we have them ready. Can we briefly approach about a
Sure.
piece of evidence?
All right, let's go ahead and take a stretch break. All right. All right, so the state may call its next witness, please.
Your Honor, at this time, the state calls John Klobes to the stand.
All right, thank you. Hello, sir. Welcome. Come on in. How you doing today? Sir, if you'd stay there and raise your right hand, and you solemnly swear that the information you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat here. Make yourself comfortable. And when you're settled in, would you please give the spelling of your name to my reporter? Thank you, sir.
You ready? Charlie, Lima, Oscar, Bravo, Echo, Sierra, Lobes. First name, John, Julia, Oscar, Hotel, November. Middle name.
No, that's okay. Thank you, sir. All right, when you're all ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is John Klobes. I am a retired police officer with the City of St. Louis.
Sir, I want to direct your attention back to June of 2003. Did you work in the 911 dispatch unit?
I was assigned to the Communications Division at that time, yes, sir.
Okay, and what were your job duties in that role?
Basically, I was the person who had care, custody, and control of all of the records of the Communications Division.
And that would include 911 calls?
That would include the 911 calls, and it would include the radio traffic if anybody needed that.
So you were the custodian of record, basically, for the communications department of the St. Louis City Police Department?
Yes, sir, at that time.
Okay. And did you, may I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Showing the witness was been marked as State's Exhibit 9. Sir, what are we looking at here in State's Exhibit 9?
It's a, excuse me, this is a copy of a 911 call.
The 911 call on that disc that I just showed you, was that a call placed by Dawan Ferguson at 6:07 a.m.?
I believe that was how the person identified themselves.
Okay. And did you receive a request from a Detective Harry Howell to obtain a copy of that 911 call?
Yes, I did.
And have you had an opportunity to listen to the 911 call on the original VHS and on the subsequent disc?
Yes, I have.
And is the recording that is contained on that a fair and accurate depiction of the 911 call that you had turned over at that time?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time I move for the admission of State's Exhibit 9, a copy of the 911 call.
No objection.
All right, thank you. So State's Exhibit 9 shall be admitted in evidence. Do you wish to publish the call, or?
Yes, Your Honor. I also have a corresponding transcript for the jury, and I have a transcript instruction for the court.
All right, if you'd please give me those. And Tim, if you'd help. Thank you, sir.
And, Your Honor, I have a copy of the transcript labeled 9A for the court to review.
All right, thank you. Do you have the instruction? I have one. Thank you. All right, thank you. You ready? All right, ladies and gentlemen, State's Exhibit 9, the audio recording of the 911 call has been admitted into evidence, will now be played for you. A transcript of the audio recording has been provided to you to read as you listen to the audio recording. This transcript is not evidence and is being provided to you to assist you in following the audio recording. You are instructed, however, that the audio recording and not the transcript is the evidence. Should there be any discrepancies between the audio recording and the transcript, you are to be guided by what you hear on the audio recording. All right, thank you. You may proceed if you wish to publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Why don't we go ahead and collect the transcripts back, please? John, here you go. Thank you. All right, thank you. Cross-examination?
No question.
All right, witness may be released.
Yes, Your Honor.
Officer, you may step down. Have a good day. Thank you. Or is it detective?
No, retired.
All right, have a good day. Be safe.
State calls Officer Frederick Scott Wolf, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Well,
Where do I go?
Well, I'll get you in a second. You just raise your right hand. You can solemnly swear that the information you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true stuff you got. All right, thank you. Would you prefer to sit there? All right, so if you could,
Can you back up over here?
yeah, maybe like next to the witness box. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Do you want me to move that chair or anything, Your Honor?
Judge, if you move the chair behind you and then you can
Yeah, let's do that because I want him to have the microphone. So you'll move the chair.
Sure.
Where it is. It's a guarantee we won't have any sidebars.
It's not just,
Yes, sir. Could you give the, if you're comfortable there, give the spelling of your name to reporter, please?
Wolf, W-O-L-F. My first name is Frederick, F-R-E-D-E-R-I-C-K. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
All right, so you, when you're ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you introduce yourself to the jury for me?
Frederick Scott Wolf.
And were you previously employed as a police officer?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you tell the jurors about your training and how long you were a police officer?
I was a police officer for 17 years. I went through 16
Officer,
weeks.
may I interrupt you? Could you maybe
Yes.
speak up if nothing else? The microphone doesn't really move much, but just speak up a little bit louder into the microphone.
When I first went on the police department, I was did a 16-week academy training, along with yearly post certified training for investigation, interview, interrogation, stuff like that, ongoing the entire 17 years.
And when did you first become a police officer? What year?
1987.
1987? Okay. And so in 2003, were you a police officer with St. Louis City?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have occasion to respond to Page and Skinker on June 11th of 2003?
Yes, I did.
And will you tell the jury what happened that morning or why you responded to that location?
Very early in the morning, I recall it was just after 6 a.m. I was riding with a gentleman named David Nerviani, who's also an officer.
When you say riding with, partner? In the same car?
Exactly. We received a radio assignment. We were actually handling only radio calls at the time. We received a radio assignment for a stolen auto at Skinker and Page, and further information that the victim's child was still in the vehicle. So and we were actually fairly close to the vicinity, so that's when we responded.
And when you say radio call, you had dispatch telling you we've received a call to Page and Skinker?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you responded to Page and Skinker, what was the first thing you did?
Upon our arrival, I observed the defendant standing at the intersection, standing at the corner by the payphone. I didn't pay too much attention to him because I also saw two different police cars that were also in the area that I could see visually. So I wanted to get them to my in my presence so that I could tell them how I wanted to proceed with the search area. There's a very certain way that I wanted them to search.
In what way did you want them to search?
The latest information that we had was that the vehicle was last headed east on Page. Well, I wanted them to start east on Page in the first 2 to 3 blocks. The 2 to 3 blocks immediately east of our intersection.
And when you say east on Page, help me familiarize myself. Would this be east on Page? Would that be headed into the city? Would that be in
It'd
the
be headed
county?
east towards the city, towards our basically our downtown area.
Okay. Now, when you did you eventually meet with or speak with? You said the defendant.
Mm-hmm.
And who was that person that you spoke with?
Mr. Ferguson.
Okay. If you saw him again, would you recognize him?
Absolutely, I would.
And do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Let me point out and identify him for the record.
He's seated at the defendant's table next to counsel.
And what is she wearing?
I can't tell. White shirt.
Okay. Will the court note that the witness has identified the defendant, please?
Yeah, the record will reflect. Thank you.
Okay. And when you spoke with Mr. Ferguson, what did you take away from that conversation?
Objection, hearsay.
That'll be overruled. I don't think you're asking him what the defendant said. You're asking what was his impression of what was said, his demeanor, things like that.
Yes, Your Honor.
His
We'll also object to the relevance.
All right, that'll be overruled as well. So you may, why don't you restate the question for the witness, please?
When you spoke with Mr. Ferguson, what was your impression of him?
My first impression, and like I said, I wasn't. I didn't have all my complete attention on him. I could hear Officer Nerviani interviewing him. Like I said, I was kind of determined to get the officers that had come to help in the right area as soon as possible because time was of the essence right then with the information that we had.
Okay. Did you ever speak with Mr. Ferguson?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And when you spoke with him, what did he say to you?
I heard, I can't for 20 years back look at it and say, these are the exact words spoken. I don't have the memory for it. But what struck me at that time was he was a regular victim. He was every victim that I had dealt with in all those years. He was upset. He was nervous. He was pacing. And like I said, I went to get the other officers directed patrol before I approached him. Sorry.
At some point in your training experience, at this time, how long have you been a police officer?
15-ish years.
So in your 15 years of experience, did you start to at some point think maybe something wasn't right about this 911 phone call?
Absolutely, I did.
And what was the turning point for you?
When I had overheard the conversation between Officer Nerviani and the defendant, I started to get the impression that it wasn't the truth. I felt like at some point that...
Objection, speculation.
Response.
I can ask a question again, Your Honor.
All right. Please do so. I'll sustain the objection as to further in the answer. Why don't you ask another question?
Sure. Officer Wolf, at some point, did you think that did you start to believe and change your course of your investigation?
Yes. And I'm sorry to keep going back to it, but my original thought was to get the directed patrol because in my experience, and I've had these calls, and I hate to say these calls, but almost verbatim, of people that left to go to work and take their child to school and forgot to turn the coffee maker off. stuff like that. So I'm going to leave the car going or running, and I'm going to run in the house, and they come back, and their car's gone. So this isn't a call that is just so miraculous. It's something that I had handled several times before. So I was at the time.
So let me ask you, what was it about this call that stood out to you?
With, can I finish
Objection.
my last?
Hold on a second. Why don't you, hold on a second, sir, why don't you just restate your question or ask him the next question?
Was there something about this call that stood out to you? You
Was
said
it-
you've done this, that you've had these calls multiple times. What was it about this call that stood out to you?
The child still
Relevance.
being in the vehicle.
Hold on a second. What's the objection?
Relevance.
Respond.
It goes to his continuing course of conduct, Your Honor.
All right, so why don't you guys approach real fast? So my chair trick did not work. I'll think of something else. All right, so I'm not quite sure where we were in terms of the jury. Why don't we, I'll sustain the objection if you'll just ask your next question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sir, let me ask you this. You have been a police officer for 15 years at this point. You had investigated, I think you testified earlier, multiple stolen car reports.
Absolutely.
And you were starting to say there was something about this one that wasn't the same as the others.
I'm sorry to keep going back to it, but the directed patrol was imperative at the time. In my past experience, and in this case also, I had a fairly high degree of confidence that we were going to find the car along with Christian in fairly short order. And the reason for this is, like I said, my past experience. People that steal a car want a ride. They don't want a kidnapping charge. So my first indication that there was something different about this case was number one, that we didn't come up with the vehicle and Christian in short order. We had cars from other districts, other jurisdictions, and we were just tearing everything apart trying to find this thing.
Judge, I'm going to object to the narrative.
Yeah, I'll sustain the objection. Go ahead and ask your next question, please.
You said that immediately after you arrived, there were two other cars that you directed in the direction of Page into the city, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And nobody ever located Christian?
No.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination? Ms. Tremaine, you may start when you're ready.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you and your partner arrived at the payphone.
Mm-hmm.
You made contact with Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
And you testified that he was very upset.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you had about 12, 15 years experience somewhere in there
Yeah.
at this point in time back in June
Yeah.
2003. Based on your training and experience, witnesses who are upset, emotionally disturbed, can have difficulty giving a description of a suspect. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And you said you've investigated several car thefts?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you say dozens, hundreds?
I would say hundreds.
Hundreds? Based on your experience and your training, you've testified sometimes, sadly, cars are stolen with children still inside them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Thank you.
And in those instances, the car is quickly abandoned because the thief recognizes there's a child here.
Yes, ma'am.
In a case where the child is not readily visible in the car, lying down, asleep, covered by a blanket, it would take the thief a bit longer to recognize.
Hold on a second. Yeah, I'll sustain the objection. Calls for speculation calls for facts not in evidence. You may ask your next question.
Did you receive information that the child was sick
Yes.
and in the back seat?
Yes.
And so in an instance where a child is sick in a back seat, would it possibly take a thief longer to notice that child?
I'll overrule the objection. The officers testified as to his extensive experience. I think it's a reasonable question. You may ask a question or answer the question.
It's very possible. I've never seen it happen, but it's possible.
And in your search, as you canvassed, you said you were canvassing trying to find the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
The defendant accompanied you and your partner in the car, is that correct, as you canvassed that morning?
I don't know, it was canvassing as much as transporting him to the area station, because as this was evolving, we needed the detectives and juvenile there. So we called them in, and they were there immediately. So we were more of a transportation than canvassing the area. We didn't, as far as Nerviani and I, very minimally searched the area. We let that go with everybody else.
You remember coming in for a deposition earlier this month?
Yes.
When you came into the prosecutor's office and talked with us, you were under oath to tell the truth?
I was a Zoom.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
No.
Apologize. And at that point, I asked you, so Mr. Ferguson accompanied,
You may. Ms. Tremaine, do you have a copy of the transcript for the witness?
yes, Judge, I do.
Okay. And what page and line are you going to be referencing when you visit with the officer?
I'd like to direct attention to page 10. No, let's see. Apologize, Your Honor, just a moment.
That's okay.
Page 14,
All right.
lines 19 through 21.
All right. Would you like to approach the witness and show him that particular page and line?
May I?
You may.
Okay, guarantee I'm going to be able to read it.
All right. You may go ahead and ask your question.
So there on page 14, beginning at line 19, I asked you, so Mr. Ferguson accompanied you and David for that canvas? Mm-hmm. And your answer
I
was
did.
yes?
Yeah,
May I continue?
yes, absolutely, sorry.
And then I asked you approximately how long you would say you canvassed with Mr. Ferguson in the car. You said maybe 12 to 15 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing further.
All right. Thank you. Any redirect?
Just briefly.
If you'd come up here to the podium, please. And Ms. Tremaine, here's the page back. Thank you.
Ms. Wolf, do you have a copy of this deposition?
Oh,
No, no, ma'am.
I'm going to show you, it's been marked, which side may approach, Your Honor.
you may.
Page 14 and 15. In fact, that line continues on to the mat.
Yes, ma'am.
And what does the rest of that say? Or can you testify what the rest of that says?
So Mr. Ferguson accompanied you and David for that canvass. I put yes. Approximately how long did you say the canvass with Mr. Ferguson in the car? Maybe 12 to 15 minutes, I think, and I think that we were directed to take him to the station.
And you were directed to take him to the station, is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any further recross?
No, Your Honor.
All right, witness may be released.
Yes, Your Honor.
If you want, you can go out down the hallway, you want to go back, whatever is convenient for you.
My wife is sitting at the front door waiting
So
for
you
me.
do want to go out the back. I'm kidding. Kidding. I'm kidding. Kidding. I tried doing you a favor and you look like the hero. Goodbye. Be careful. Have a good day. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I think it's probably a good time to take a break. All right, so before you go, the court again reminds you of what you were told at the first recess of the court. Until you retire to consider your verdict, you must not discuss this case among yourselves or with others or permit anyone to discuss it in your hearing. You should not form or express any opinion about the case until it is finally given to you to decide. Do not do any research or investigation on your own about any matter regarding this case or anyone involved with the trial. Do not communicate with others about the case by any means. Do not read, view, or listen to any newspaper, radio, electronic communication from the internet, or television report of the trial. And turn off those news alerts. Remember that? Disable those. Thank you so much. We'll get you back out maybe 10, 15 minutes, okay? Thank you all. Yes, also, oh. Yeah, N-E-R, V-I-A-N-I. All right, you may be seated. Thank you all. I'm going to, you okay, take a few more minutes? All right. While we're still out here, we're outside the presence of the jury. It is... All right, thank you, everyone. You may be seated. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Schlesinger, we'll continue with the state's case. You may call your next witness, please.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a record you wanted to seek to put in evidence?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay.
At this time, Your Honor, the state is seeking to admit State's Exhibit 11, which are certified records from the U.S. Department of Commerce from the National Centers for Environmental Information.
All right, and state your objection, if any.
Yes, sir, I do object. These records are hearsay, and they are testimonial in nature, which violates Mr. Ferguson's Sixth Amendment right. So I would ask for these records to not be admitted.
All right, so and we had discussed this during the break, so the court will overrule the objection. Exhibit 11 shall be admitted in evidence. And is there a particular data point or something that you wanted to, and you might want to explain what those records are to me again, please?
Yes, Your Honor. These are records from the National Center for Environmental Information, and these records contain, particularly on the first page, and that explains subsequently, that on the day of June 11th, 2003, the sunrise was clocked at 5:36 a.m.
All right, thank you. All right, you may call, you have a witness to call next, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
State calls Chuck Creely, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Officer, how are you?
Fine, sir.
Welcome. You will just raise your hand. You do solemnly swear that the information you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Just get the spelling of your name to the reporter, please, and we'll get started.
Creely.
Officer Creely, if you can introduce yourself to the jury for me and tell them a little bit about your background.
My name is Officer Charles Creely with the Arnold Police Department. I've been a police officer for approximately 22 years. Started out with the city of Ferguson, and in approximately 2016, went to the city of Arnold.
Okay. And so in 2003, you were employed as a police officer with the city of Florissant, correct?
Ferguson.
Ferguson, I'm sorry. I'm going to draw your attention back to June 11th of 2003. Do you remember responding to a report of a suspicious vehicle on that date?
I do.
And do you recall what time it was? I know it's been about 20 years, but
Approximately 7 o'clock
okay.
in the morning.
And why do you recall that it was about 7 o'clock?
It was shortly after shift change, and it started at, the shift started at 6:30.
And so had you just gone on shift or started that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you responded to a call of a abandoned vehicle, what did you reply, or where did you respond to that location? What location was that at?
It was on Dead End Street called Ron Bar. Did you want me to describe further?
When you say dead end street, was it a large neighborhood? Was it a small street of small houses?
Small street, small houses.
Okay. And when you responded, what car did you find, or did you find a car?
I found a maroon Ford Explorer Expedition. It was unoccupied. I ran the plate, and it came back as a stolen vehicle.
Okay. If I may approach, Your Honor.
You may.
And just to be clear, this is on June 11th, about 7 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to show you the marked states exhibits 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. If you could look at those for me, sir. And what are those pictures of?
The vehicle I located for the suspicious auto call.
And that you ran the plates on and was reported stolen?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that a true and accurate depiction of the vehicles that looked that day?
It is.
And the way the street looked that day?
It is.
Will you tell me, I know you said that it was a dead-end street and a small street. Where, would you call Ron Bar an easy-to-locate side street?
No, I wouldn't.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I moved to admit States Exhibits 12 through 16 into evidence, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. So States Exhibits 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 shall be admitted in evidence. Cross-examination?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's talk a little bit more about the vehicle. Did you inventory the vehicle?
I don't believe I did.
Did you examine its contents when you were there on Ron Bar?
From the exterior.
You didn't do any searching inside the car?
I believe, I actually, I don't recall.
You don't recall?
No, ma'am.
Do you remember coming in for a deposition
I do.
June the 3rd of this year?
I do.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Direct your attention to page 11.
Mr. Maine, is that a copy of his deposition
This is a
transcript?
copy of your deposition from June the 3rd.
All right, and what page and line are you showing the witness?
Page 11,
All right.
beginning with line 3.
Okay, thank you.
If you could read.
Okay. Did you look inside of the vehicle? I remember doing an inventory for towing it, and I didn't remember anything specific except with the exception I found odd that I just remembered this. It was a bulletproof vest inside of it.
Thank you. So you testified back on the 3rd that you found a bulletproof vest inside the vehicle.
I remember a bulletproof vest being in the vehicle.
Do you recall where it was in the vehicle?
I don't specifically know. I believe it was behind the driver's seat.
A bulletproof vest is something people in law enforcement use, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So to the average thief, this looked like a detective or a cop's car?
That'll be sustained.
Based on your training and experience, thieves are a little bit more reluctant to steal property from law enforcement, right?
Yeah, that's sustained.
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. Any redirect? All right, thank you, officer. You may step down. You're free to go. Be safe.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Bailey-Smith, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Andrea Murphy Johnson.
Morning, ma'am. Welcome. Come on up. If you could just raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that the information you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I thank you. Go ahead and take a seat here in the witness chair. Make yourself comfortable. Once you do get comfortable, if you would spell your name for my reporter, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
It is Andrea Murphy, Murphy Johnson, Johnson.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, good morning, Ms. Johnson.
Good morning.
So I'm going to draw your attention back to June 11th of 2003. Did you live on a street called Ron Bar at that time?
Correct.
Okay. And who lived with you on Ron Bar in 2003?
My boyfriend and my 2 kids.
Can you speak into the microphone? I'm having a hard time hearing you. Sorry.
My boyfriend and my 2 kids.
Okay. And so did you have a normal morning routine back in June 11th of 2013 or 2003?
Yes.
And what was your normal routine?
Well, he would get up, go to work. I get the kids up and get them ready for school.
Okay. And what time did you usually wake up?
I usually got up around 5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. And why did you wake up at 5 a.m.?
Normally?
Yes.
Because normally that's just enough time to get myself together and get the kids ready.
Okay. And on June 11th of 2003, did something happen that was different that morning?
Yes, I heard a screech outside of my house.
Okay. Were you up at this point?
I was up, but I was still laying in the bed
And where was your bed in relation to the street?
next to the window that faces the street.
Okay. And you said you had a screech?
Yes,
And then what did you do after you heard the screech?
I looked out the window.
And when you looked out the window, what, if anything, did you see?
I seen some headlights to the left, taillights, I'm sorry, not headlights, taillights to the left, and some lights had flashed through my window beforehand.
Ma'am, could you, pull it down a little?
Okay.
Thank you.
Some lights had flashed through the window before I heard the screech up going up the street like somebody had made a turn or something. I'm not sure what happened with that, but I seen some tail lights at the top of the street, and when I looked to the right, I seen a car sitting on the street.
Okay. And if you saw that car again, would you recognize it?
Yes.
What was that car that you saw at the top, sitting at the street?
At the top of the street?
Yes. I'm sorry, by your house. What was the car that you saw?
Because I didn't see the car at the top of the street. I
I'm
just
sorry,
seen
the
tail
house
lights.
that you saw by the house.
Okay, that was a red SUV.
Okay. And if you saw that vehicle again, would you recognize it?
Yes.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness.
You may.
I'm going to show you it's marked as State Statistics 12, 13, 14, and 16. You would look at 12, 13, 14, and 16 for me, Ms. Johnson?
Are you not saying 15?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, that's fine.
And is that a true and accurate depiction of the vehicle you saw on your street?
Yes.
If I may publish a picture.
You may. Just let us know for the record which exhibit number you're showing, please.
This is 12, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Is this a picture? What is this a picture of?
The car at the bottom of the street is toward, it faces the train tracks. The car is facing the train tracks. It's like some trees that way, and then the train tracks sit at the bottom of the hill.
Now, in 2003, Ms. Johnson, how long had you lived on Ron Bar?
For 4 years.
Would you call it a small street?
Yes, it's a small street.
About how many houses are on that street?
8.
8. Did you recognize most of the cars that your other neighbors had?
Objection
Yeah.
relevant.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, what's your answer?
Yes.
Did you recognize this as belonging to somebody on your street?
No.
Which exhibit are you publishing
I'm
now?
sorry, Your Honor, this is number 13.
Okay, thank you.
Now, you can't see your house in this picture, can you?
No.
But from where is your house located? Can you tell?
My house is on the other side of the house where the tall tree is.
Like right
The
here?
tall tree is actually not in that yard. It looks that way from
Back
there,
here.
but it's a little further back.
Okay. But is that the way the SUV looked, and that's where it was parked on that morning of June 11th?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Is this a true and accurate copy of where, or reflection of where that SUV was parked on June 11th?
Yes.
Show you it's State Exhibit 14. And what is this a picture of, Ms. Murphy Johnson?
That is the picture of the car that was found today.
And is this the dead end, the street?
Yes.
And I'll show you what's marked space 16.
That,
Do you know whose house this is? This is not your house, correct?
no, that's not my house. That was my neighbor's house. I did not know their names at that time.
And you said you were up at 5 a.m.
Objection leading.
I think it's just recapping her earlier testimony, so overruled. Ma'am, you can answer.
Yes,
Do you remember if it was light or dark outside?
it was not quite all the way light and not quite dark. So it's kind of dusky.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a few questions for you. So you've testified, you noticed headlights shining through the window, heard a screech.
Yes,
Later on that day, you learned that this red SUV that we've just looked at was connected to the disappearance of a boy, right?
yes.
And you wanted to be helpful in that case.
Well, they came to my door that morning,
And you wanted
not,
to help by,
not later.
when did they come to your door?
That morning.
And you wanted to help.
I'm going to answer the questions that I'm asked. So it wasn't about being helpful. I didn't know exactly what was going on at that time. I just answered the questions that was asked of me.
By the time you got to your window that morning and looked out past the curtains and the blinds, you couldn't see what kind of car it was, could you?
Objection. Also, facts not evidence. Witness never stated she was looking for blinds or curtains.
Yeah, that objection will be sustained.
When you looked out your window, did you have to remove any window covering first?
Yes, well, not remove it. I just looked through the crack of it.
To peek out?
Yes, well, to look out.
But you couldn't see what kind of car it was at that point. Weren't able
You mean
weren't
the
able
car
to
that, which car are you talking about?
Yes, the
Oh.
car that caught your attention.
No, I could not see anything but the taillights.
In fact, you couldn't describe the car that you heard screech, right?
No,
A bush was in your way or some trees?
no,
Hold on a second. Yeah, that'll be sustained.
Was there anything blocking your view?
no, not to my left,
Nothing was in the way?
not to my left.
When you looked out to see the car whose headlights you saw that made the screech, nothing was in your way?
Objection. Asked and answered.
I'll overrule the objection. You can answer if you're able, ma'am.
No, there is nothing blocking my way that way.
Do you remember coming in for a deposition earlier this month?
Correct.
When you spoke with me and my co-counsel and the prosecutors were there and you swore to tell the truth?
Yes,
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may. All right. And are you approaching with a copy of the transcript of the witness's deposition?
I am, Your Honor.
Alrighty. And then if you would direct us to page and line, please.
Beginning with line 2,
On what page? I didn't hear you.
page 10.
10? Okay, thank you.
And I had asked, so when you looked out the window that morning, you were able to see what?
I was able to see a car parked on the street. I seen the car at the top of the street.
Hold on a second, ma'am. We can't really hear you. So are you asking her to read from the
You'll
transcript?
follow along, I can read it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, why don't you, hold on a second. this is not improper impeachment, okay? So why don't you have the witness read the section and ask her if she recalls saying that?
If you would begin reading and looking for your answer.
I would say,
You can read it to yourself.
okay.
Do you recall that?
Yes. Where do you want me to read down to?
It's line 12.
Yeah.
So for the record, it says, I was able to see a car parked on the street. I seen a car at the top of the street from the screech, but I could not, I didn't get a chance to look at the car, just heard the noise. By the time I looked out the window, because I have blinds and curtains up to my window, so by the time I looked out, then I could not see what kind of car it was or anything. I just seen the car turn.
Correct.
I read that correctly?
Is that a yes?
Yes.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All right,
Thank you. Actually, may I direct your attention to one more passage in the deposition? It's the next page, page 11, Judge. You could read beginning with line 1,
Okay.
and you can read it out loud.
Could I describe the vehicle?
hold on a second. Let's step back. And counsel, please approach for a second.
Apologies for the confusion. Just one more question. It's not clear to you that the red vehicle you've identified in the photos here, or noticed in the photos here, was the vehicle that made the screech and whose lights you saw, correct?
Are you saying it's the same car?
I'm saying it's not clear to you that it is.
No, it's clear to me that it's not the same car.
Okay, nothing further.
All right, thank you. Anything further for the witness?
Briefly, Your Honor.
All right.
Ms. Murphy-Johnson, I just want to be clear for the record. You saw, there were two cars that morning when you woke up.
Yes.
One you saw and identified here in court.
Objection leading.
Well, I think we're just recapping the testimony and trying to aid the jury, so you can continue. Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. One you already identified, it was the red SUV, correct?
Correct.
And then there was another one that you just saw the taillights of and heard what you thought was a screech coming from it.
Correct.
I have nothing further, Your
All
Honor.
right, thank you. Ms. Tremaine, anything further?
One moment, Judge.
All right, sure. Ms. Tremaine, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Witness may be released. Counsel, witness may be released. All right, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. You're free to go. Have a good day.
Thank you,
All right, state may call. Do you have another witness to call?
State calls Mark Ellis.
All right, thank you. Morning, sir. Welcome. You can come on up here. Right about there. Just raise your right hand. Be sworn in. You do solemnly swear that the information you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes. All right. Thank you, sir. Go ahead and have a seat there. Make yourself comfortable. And once you get settled in, if you can spell your name for the reporter, I would appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
My name is Mark, M-A-R-K, Ellis, E-L-L-I-S.
Good morning, Mr. Ellis.
Good morning.
Back in 2003, June 11th of 2003, where did you live?
At 326 Romboy Lane, Ferguson, Missouri.
Okay. And who did you live there with?
My wife and my kids.
Can you speak into the microphone? I'm having.
My wife and kids.
Sir, you can move that a little bit if you'd like, get more comfortable with it. Thank you, sir.
And how were you employed at the time?
I was security officer at Husman Corporation.
How long were you employed with them?
Approximately 9 years.
And did you have a shift that you worked with them?
I do believe back then it was 6 to 2.
Okay. And so what was your morning routine back in 2003, sir?
Normally, when I got off work, what were you talking about?
In the morning.
Normally, I'm a light sleeper. I usually wake up about 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Excuse me. And if anything disturbed me, I would wake up even earlier. But normally I get up, I'll walk around the house, see what's going on, walk around outside. I come back and make coffee and relax before I have to go to work.
And so did something happen to change your routine on June 11th of 2003?
I overslept.
You overslept.
I overslept that morning.
Okay. And do you remember what time you woke up? I
do
know it's been
believe
20 years, but
it was around 4 o'clock in that area.
okay. And when you woke up, was it light outside or dark outside?
I do believe, I think it was Getting Light, I think.
Getting light?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
And that, would you say it was that in-between time?
Yeah.
All right. And when you woke up, did you notice anything unusual or different outside your house?
Well, when I was in bed, when I rolled over, I just peeped out the window and I saw a vehicle in front of the house.
Okay. And why did you notice that vehicle?
It wasn't mine. So it was just an unusual vehicle that was parked in front of the house.
How long had you lived on Ron Bar in 2003?
Approximately maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe.
Okay. Would you say that you're pretty familiar with your neighbors' cars?
Oh, definitely.
And this was not, to your recollection or understanding, one of your neighbor's vehicles?
No, ma'am, it was not.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State Exhibit 12, 13, 14, and 16. I'm not using 15 again, Your Honor.
All right.
If I may approach the witness.
You may.
And do you recognize these, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And is that a true and accurate depiction of the way your street looked that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that, do you recognize that vehicle in those pictures?
Yes, ma'am, that was the vehicle that was in front of the house.
And is that the way it looked on that day of June 11th of 2003,
Yes, ma'am.
that morning?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to show you one picture of the jury.
You wish to publish?
Yes, Your Honor, they did publish.
And which one?
State's Exhibit 16, Judge.
All right.
Now, whose house is this, sir?
That's my house.
And where would your bedroom have been?
My bedroom would be right behind the vehicle.
Back here where you can't see it.
Right.
And when you saw that vehicle parked outside of your house that morning, what did you do, sir?
I got up out the bed and immediately just walked around the house. I noticed I was running late because I was late for work. And I just tried to find out, try to get ready for time and get ready for work. And I was upset that morning. My wife would say, "You need to calm down."
Okay.
Because I hate running late for work.
All right. I have nothing further, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes, briefly. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you overslept that morning.
Yes, ma'am.
You usually went outside, walked around a little bit before going to work, but that particular morning you didn't do your usual routine.
Correct.
And you said you were working the 6 to 2 shift back then.
Correct. Approximately correct.
And you were running late that day, and you didn't leave until about 6:20. Is that right?
Approximately, yes.
And if back on June 11th, 2003, you reported to police that you saw the car outside when you were on your way to work, is there any reason to believe that your memory today would be better than your memory was on that date back in 2003?
I don't recall. I know I talked to the police that evening, but I don't remember what I exactly said. But I know it was there when I left.
So if the police report reflects that you saw the car at 6:20 on your way to work,
That's correct.
correct. Nothing further.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No.
All right, thank you. A witness may be released.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. You're free to go. Have a good day. Thank you. Be safe. Do you have another witness to call at this time?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take, I think what's better than lunch is an early lunch. So we're going to take an early lunch today. It is close to 11:40. I'd ask you all to be back at 12:45. We'll try to get started right away, okay? All right, before you go, the court again reminds you what you were told at the first recess of the court. Until you're retired to consider your verdict, you must not discuss this case among yourselves or with others, or permit anyone to discuss it in your hearing. You should not form or express any opinion about the case until it is finally given to you to decide. Do not do any research or investigation on your own about any matter regarding this case or anyone involved with the trial. Do not communicate with others about the case by any means. Do not read, view, or listen to a newspaper, radio, electronic communication from the internet, or television report of the trial. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you back at 12:45. Thank you all.
All rise.